Welcome back, legends. Today we have a great video for any of you thinking about moving to Medellin because you will be an expat just like us. What do expats moving to Medellin need to watch out for? Let's begin with number 3 on the list. And this one is probably an obvious one. Understand that the safety precautions in Colombia and in Medellin especially are not the same as wherever you're from.
Yeah, so you've probably seen the stories, whether it's on Facebook groups or maybe just even on the news, of people coming down here getting mugged, getting robbed, maybe even getting killed by a Tinder date. So how do we avoid these pitfalls? Number one, you've got to remember that you're not in the United States. Colombia is nothing like the United States when it comes to law and order. In Colombia, laws aren't enforced. The police here doesn't have a lot of power nor respect. So if someone gets robbed and the police come and catch the suspect, they put them in jail for a day, and if there's no charges pressed against that person, they're released that very same day or the next day. That's why you see a higher crime rate. People getting mugged and robbed because thieves know that there really isn't a consequence. Even if you kill someone, the most you could ever do, there is no life imprisonment
really?
here. No, there is no life in prison in Colombia. The life in prison is 40 to 50 years.
Okay.
With good time, bad time, you could be out in maybe half of that. Yeah, it's horrible. But that's what it's like in Colombia. So knowing that now, you have this leg up because now when you come to Colombia, you're going to be extra careful. Doesn't mean that you have to be paranoid because people aren't getting robbed and murdered and stabbed.
Doesn't happen.
Robbed and pickpocketed here daily. Knowing this now, you should probably start practicing that when you go to your local Starbucks or you go to your local library or whatever it is. Take your stuff with you. That's what you're going to be doing here. You're not going to be leaving things on a table somewhere and expecting to see them again.
I think the main takeaway from this, guys, is that you need to exercise a much higher level of awareness when you're in Medellin. Don't be scared by that. It was kind of hard to get used to for me as well when I first got here. I'm from Australia, one of the most safest countries in the world where nothing ever happens.
A crocodile
Yeah, the only scariest thing
held
is
you
that,
up at gunpoint.
the animals are more likely to kill you than the people. So when I came here, I was like, oh man, this is tiring. I got to be looking at my, take out my phone. Don't look at my phone. But you get used to it after a while. So the main tip I would say is start, Andrew said, practicing those awareness tips. Take care of your property and also of your surroundings, right? Like in Colombia, you can't just be going randomly to a place you don't know. You need a higher level of research, and that's why we do these videos as well, to educate you guys a bit about what you should know. So yeah, be educated, be aware, and normally you'll be safe, because to generalize, I'd say 99% of crime happens to people when they have been doing something irresponsible.
Right. Yeah, and being caught at the wrong place at the wrong time and being irresponsible at the same time. Yeah, because most petty crime is opportunistic petty crime. They're just circling the city on their motorbikes looking for a target and looking for that right opportunity. So if you lower that chance for someone, then they'll just pass you by. The fact of the matter is that you have to exercise precaution and you have to be aware of your surroundings, and don't come thinking that this is the United States, that if something happens to me, I'm going to have recourse, because many times you don't have recourse.
And the number 2 tip, Andrew, is what?
Understanding local pricing.
Yeah, this is a big thing that I see a lot of fresh expats making because they come straight from the US or another country, and they might go to a restaurant and they look at the menu. Oh, this is $20. Wow, in the US I'd spend $30 for this. What a deal. Let's go. Whereas anyone who's been to Colombia know that's an absolute ripoff, right?
Yeah, it could be a ripoff. For example, if you're coming from the US and you've got dollars, one of the big things that I always tell my friends that come down here is to stop thinking in dollars, because you can fall into that trap where you're thinking in dollars, and even though you're getting a discount or you're buying something that you perceive as cheap, for the locals that wouldn't be cheap, and you're getting ripped off. So understanding that is the first step. Number 2 is, well, how do you understand it? I think the best way to understand this is by doing research, like watching this video right now or watching any of the other videos that we have on our channels. But once you're here, is understand the different neighborhoods within the city. For example, if you're in El Poblado, you know things are going to be overpriced, and you can expect to pay a little bit more for that lunch special, for that dinner date, for that cocktail at the bar. Yes, that's true. But know that there's alternatives. You can literally go to a nice restaurant in Laureles and pay probably half of what you would pay in El Poblado. And if you wanted to find an even bigger bargain, you would go to other neighborhoods like Belén, Floresta, maybe even Envigado, or even downtown to get really, really cheap prices.
This applies for not just food, Andrew, but anything. Rental prices, cost of living, day-to-day things, even shopping. You said in a previous video that in malls, they even mark up the price on certain things depending on the neighborhood you live in. So if you live in a more richer neighborhood, you could be paying more for the same t-shirt as in a middle-class neighborhood.
Yeah, if you go to Tesoro and you go to Zara or Bershka, the prices there are probably going to be more expensive than if you go to that same store in Mallorca, which is in Itagüí.
And also, Andrew mentioned that you might want to leave Poblado and go to like Laureles to get a better deal. But it's even simpler than that sometimes. Even if you just move to a different section of the same neighborhood, it can become cheaper. For example, right now where we're recording this video is the beautiful sub-neighborhood of Manila. And here is like a lot of hostels and backpacker kind of area.
Yeah.
And it's considerably cheaper than if you went to Parque Lleras or Provenza and tried to get something there.
Right.
So even knowing the little areas within a neighborhood can really help cut your costs. Probably the biggest example of this where people come from their countries and think in dollars and waste a lot of money is probably your business, mate. Airbnb.
Airbnb. The fact of the matter is that, yeah, a lot of people do overpay because it's less than what they're paying for monthly in the United States. If they're coming from a city like New York or Los Angeles or Miami, they might be spending, $3,000, $5,000 per month on, let's say, a mortgage or even a rent. And then when they get here and they see a $2,000, $2,500, a beautiful apartment that's brand new with air conditioning, with a view, et cetera, they see that as cheap. But the fact of the matter is that same apartment for a local that's renting that apartment could be $800, $600.
Yeah, half the price or even less. Yeah, that's probably the biggest reason why you need to understand pricing and check around a bit. And you'll save a lot of money that way. So do not think in dollars is the second biggest tip for expats moving to Colombia. By the way, guys, if you're finding this information useful and you're really interested in moving to Medellin, then visit the website medellinmasterclass.com. There, you can sign up to receive our free Moving to Medellin checklist.
All right, so the number one piece of advice for anybody that wants to be an expat and live in Medellin is?
I would say learn Spanish. That is the number one tip that's really, really gonna give you the full experience of this country, right?
And what level of Spanish would that be? Would it be like being fluent or to beginner? Where would you gauge it?
I would say on a scale of 0 to 10,
Yeah.
0 being someone who's never even opened up a Spanish book, and 10 being, maybe you, or completely fluent.
Right.
Maybe like 6 is enough.
I think 6 would be enough.
6 is enough because here they're very friendly, the Colombians. So even if you're trying, they'll work with you to communicate, So even now, after 2 years, I spent a lot of time in the first 6 months really, really learning. And after that, I was like, it's good enough. So I just stopped learning altogether.
Right.
Even at my level, I do make grammatical errors. Some words I mix up, but they still understand and they still continue. They don't just look at me like, oh, what did you say? That was wrong, so I don't understand. So they will help you, the Colombians.
Right.
But to meet locals, you really need to speak their language because less than 5% of Colombians speak English. The downside of that, Andrew, I think that there's so many people here, right? In Medellin, there might be, 4 million people, something like that. And if you think about really the amount of people that are expats, other Americans, Australians, whatever.
It's a small percentage.
Could be how much? 10,000?
Yeah, I think 10,000 is pretty.
Is high?
Is high, yeah.
Okay, so think about you're missing 3.99 million people you could be making connections with,
Right.
So even on a small level, like right now, I'm going and often at the tennis court or at the gym or something, I'll talk to people there and we'll just become friends and maybe work out together or we'll play tennis weekly together. And if I didn't speak Spanish at all, I wouldn't even be able to ask them, hey, you want to come and play or whatever. So just like about a 6, like intermediate level will really go a long, long way here. We're not even going to talk about dating in this video, but that's obvious.
It's obvious, yeah. It's one of those things. Learning Spanish is for those that are looking to live here long term. Now, if you're coming for a month or 2 months or even just weeks, doesn't matter. You can have a little translator. You could use Google Translate, and you could get by, and you'll be fine. But if you want to live here and make long-lasting connections, be able to rent an apartment locally, be able to have a conversation with the person at the supermarket, whatever the case may be, you definitely need to have a certain level of Spanish, and it has to be around a 6 or intermediate level of Spanish, because once you're here, like AK himself has experienced, your level of Spanish is going to go through the roof because you're practicing every day. Unless if you're one of those, as he so pleasantly puts it, that comes here and only hangs out with other gringo expats, then you're not going to learn anything. But if you really want to make a change in your life for the better, learning another language is just one of those great things that you can do.
Thank you for calling me out for what I said off the air, off the record.
Hey, nothing's off the record. What happens in Andrew's studios doesn't stay in Andrew's studio.
But now you said that, let me just explain. I think that's a shitty way to travel. Why wouldn't you just stay in the US and hang with Americans? If you're going to come here and all your friends are Americans, you don't even know one word to speak to a Colombian. You're ordering in English and getting mad when they don't understand. Like, what the man, come on.
Yeah, it just opens up a whole new world, because once you start learning the language, then you really start understanding the culture. Things like, why do they do certain things that seem backwards to us, the way that they do it? Once you start learning the language and the culture, then you start understanding why these things happen, and you don't lose your patience.
Yeah.
You actually work within the system, and you can thrive.
Another thing is that if you know Spanish, you save a shitload of money. Let me just give you 2 examples of things that I do, okay?
Yeah.
So my tennis lessons with someone who speaks Spanish is like $5. But for someone who does the same tennis lesson but speaks English, he can charge more.
Oh,
so
okay.
instead of that $6, he charged $20.
Yeah, it's the same thing in the U.S. Like if you have someone that's bilingual, that bilingual person is making more money than the person that just speaks English.
Because they can, right?
Because they can, and they're able to open up their market and facilitate to those that can't speak the language. So yeah, it's learning Spanish, #1 tip, I think. Yeah.
It also gives you like an added sense of like respect, I guess. Like, you know, automatically when you text someone about an apartment or something, you're texting in Spanish, they're like, okay, they're not trying to gringo price it straight away. But as soon as they say English, they go, oh
They're
yeah,
like, oh,
there's
yeah,
money.
here comes the money.
To rip this guy off. So I think, honestly, we covered a couple of situations where it's really beneficial to know Spanish. But there's probably a lot more.
A lot.
But that, guys, is definitely the #1 tip. Learn some level of Spanish. Even if you are a beginner, I guarantee by the time you come here and then you practice, you're going to get to intermediate, and your life is going to be much better here living as an expat in Medellin. What do you guys think? Are there any tips that we missed out? Let us know in the comments. If you like this video, hit the thumbs up button, and we'll see you in the next one.
Ciao.